Hi everyone, I'm Julian Malara for those who don't know me. I built my own house with shipping containers. I've made about 30 videos on the subject on this YouTube channel. And now I help dozens of you with your shipping container projects through the website mamaisonconteneur.fr. Today I want to revisit a crucial point we've discussed before, but this time we'll do a comprehensive recap. How do you properly insulate your house, whether it's made from shipping containers or something else? By the way, in 2025, we're going to look together first at what laws need to be followed, then we'll see if it's better to insulate from the inside or from the outside. Lastly, we'll examine the top insulation materials for floors, walls, and roofs. Let's get started. Let's start with the laws that need to be followed. Since January 1st, 2022, the Environmental Regulation 2020 defines the rules we must follow when building a new house. We'll go over this very quickly. You don't need to know what's written in the law, for the simple and good reason that you will have to go through a thermal engineering office, meaning thermal engineers who know the law and will check that you are following it properly. To start with, the thermal engineering office will provide you with a BBIO certificate. You submit this certificate to the town hall along with your building permit, and it certifies that your project will comply with the 2020 environmental regulations. The certification proves you are collaborating with a thermal engineering firm and will adhere to proper procedures. In a second phase, after submitting the building permit, the thermal engineers will tackle the real thermal study. They will begin by calculating the precise amount of insulation needed for the floor, walls, and roof of your house. They will also calculate thermal bridges and ensure good overall insulation. They will look at where to place the windows and doors and what quality of windows and doors should be installed. Windows, bay windows, glass doors, actually all the openings. And finally, they will advise you on the heating, air conditioning, and ventilation systems to install so that your house overall has good energy performance. And finally, at the end of your construction project, when you want to declare to the town hall that you have finished building your house, other professionals will come to your home and check what is called the compliance of your installation. So they will check that you have properly implemented what the thermal study recommends. For insulation, they'll check your invoices to verify you purchased the correct amount. For the heating and ventilation systems, they will verify that everything is properly installed. To comply with the Thermal Study and Regulation 2020, these three steps, BBO certificate, thermal study, and compliance, are mandatory for any new construction project. The certificate will cost around $200, while the thermal study and compliance will each cost $500. We've laid a simple foundation. Professionals will ensure you do everything legally and correctly, so you shouldn't normally break the law. But that doesn't stop me from giving you some keys to understanding how to insulate your house well, even to insulate it as best as possible, in order to save energy in the long term. One of the questions that comes up most often is whether it's better to insulate a house from the inside or from the outside. The solution is very simple. Do both. Insulate 1/3 from the inside and 2/3 from the outside. By doing this, you already make sure that there are no thermal bridges. That is, places between your floor and your walls, or your walls and your roof, where cold or heat could get through. And let's say, make your insulation less effective. For example, for my container house, I insulated the floor from the inside and the walls from the outside. I have a significant thermal bridge around the entire house between the floor and walls. However, my thermal engineering office properly accounted for these thermal bridges, and they didn't have a significant impact on the energy performance of my house. By the way, I even made a video on this topic when professionals came to actually test the insulation of my house to see if I had properly implemented everything the thermal engineering office recommended to me. And they noticed that the insulation of my house was about 13% better than what was indicated in the theoretical calculations of the thermal study. I'm still DPEA, my house is very well insulated. So there you go, the advice I'm giving you in this video shouldn't be too bad. So there you go, the best solution is to insulate both inside and outside. But if you want to do everything on the outside or a mix of both like I did, that works very well too. But be careful, however, if you want to insulate your house 100% from the inside. In that case, it might be more complex or less efficient based on the exterior materials used on your house. For a stone or brick house, for example, insulating from the inside is not a problem, because bricks and stones won't overheat when exposed to the sun. On the other hand, for a shipping container house, if you insulate 100% from the inside, the containers will be exposed to the sun and will overheat. Our insulation must now withstand outside temperatures of not just 30 degrees, but 60 degrees or even higher. One solution is to conceal the container with wooden cladding to prevent overheating. It's the same for green roofs. It prevents overheating and the insulation has less work to do. On the other hand, in winter, if the container is exposed in the same way, it may conduct cold into the house and therefore reduce the overall performance of the insulation. So there you go. The best is to insulate a bit inside, a bit outside, or only on the outside, but not only on the inside. It's not highly recommended, even though it's often done anyway. Now let's get to the heart of the matter. How do I insulate the floor of my shipping container house? One of the simplest solutions would certainly be to make a concrete slab filled with pozzolana. Volcanic rock, for instance, is a good insulator. Then place the shipping containers on top, then insulate the walls, making sure to stick closely to the concrete slab to avoid any thermal bridges. However, I find this solution completely uninteresting. Because a concrete slab is expensive and on top of that, it uses a lot of concrete for nothing, so it's not ecological at all. Even with a container house, the advantage is that you can use smaller foundations such as concrete pads or screw piles. If we put our containers on pads, what could be interesting is to spray expanding polyurethane foam on the underside of our container. The foam expands, would fill all the gaps well, and we would have perfect insulation without any thermal bridges. The advantage of this insulation is that it's rot-proof, it doesn't fear water. So the solution, let's say, is an all-in-one solution. An eco-friendly solution could be using wood fiber panels, but we would need to add a rain barrier and oriented strand board to close it off. But anyway, this solution of insulating the containers from underneath is very complicated to implement in reality, because that would mean that during delivery, you would have to ask them to wait for a couple of minutes. That you install your insulation and then the container is lowered onto the foundations, which isn't possible. There you go, it's not possible. So either you have space under your containers to insulate later, or you need to have machines at home to lift the containers again, insulate and put them back down. So for me, insulating the floor from the outside isn't really very interesting when you're a self-builder. If you do this in a factory, yes, but if you have to do it on a construction site, it's not the best solution. The most common and effective solution is to insulate from the inside. We have maritime I-cube containers, which means there are two vergel, 70 meters of ceiling height, so it's very easy to add insulation and still end up with a perfectly normal ceiling height. Inside the container, we'll start by doing a leveling, which means we'll even out the floor of our containers. Then we'll install 10 centimeter polyurethane panels. We cover these panels with 10 millimeter oriented strand boards. And finally, on top of that, we can put the covering of our choice, tiles, parquet, whatever you want. The polyurethane solution is interesting as it's a thin, space-efficient insulator at only 10 centimeters thick. It's rot-proof, so it prevents water damage. And on top of that, it can support several hundred kilos. So there's no need to build a big structure. It's already self-supporting. As mentioned multiple times, polyurethane is an extremely polluting insulator, the most polluting of all insulators. 40x more than cellulose wadding, for instance. Moreover, it could release chemical compounds into the air in your home. So beyond the ecological aspect, it's not necessarily the best thing for the quality of life in your house in the long term. If you want a more ecological alternative, unfortunately, you'll have to recreate a wooden structure. This wooden structure can then be filled either with wood wool or with cellulose wadding, for example. But you'll need to use at least 17 centimeters to be equivalent to the 10 centimeters of polyurethane. Lastly, ensure you seal everything with a rain barrier. These insulators don't resist water well, so you need to protect them. And then we'll put at least 18 millimeters of oriented strand board so that it's really sturdy. Finally, we can finish with the flooring of our choice, such as parquet or tile. Now let's insulate the house walls starting from the inside. If you want to keep the corrugated metal walls like I did to give your container house some style, that's absolutely possible. But if not, I recommend insulating the inside and putting up drywall. That will already help improve your home's insulation a bit by eliminating all the thermal bridges. And above all, it will make it easier for you to run electrical conduits and plumbing behind those drywall walls. And so you'll have slightly cleaner finishes. To insulate the interior, it's very simple. We'll put tracks on the floor and ceiling, place studs every 60 centimeters, and install 4.5 centimeters of wood wool. For example, that way we have a good, efficient, and eco-friendly insulation. We also run all our electrical conduits and plumbing, and then we close everything up with drywall. Outside, it's going to be pretty much the same. We're going to have to recreate a wooden structure, this time to hold our insulation and especially to support the covering that we're going to put in place. That means wooden siding, aluminum, plaster, whatever you want. In this wooden structure, we could very well spray expanding polyurethane foam just like we wanted to do under the container. That would fill the gaps well. It's nice to see. However, I don't recommend this solution at all, and I'll explain why. Insulating with this material requires specialized equipment, often provided by companies, making it less economical. As I mentioned before, polyurethane is extremely polluting. And on top of that, to finish, polyurethane is certainly one of the worst insulators for summer heat. It protects well against the cold, but not at all against the heat. So, when there's a heat wave, you're either going to suffer or use a lot of air conditioning. The best solution, in my opinion, but also according to many meso containers I've visited and many eco-friendly houses that have used this solution, is to use wood wool insulation. We always come back to it. It's an excellent insulator. You put 10 centimeters horizontally, then 10 centimeters vertically. This crossed installation eliminates all thermal bridges. And here we have one of the best possible insulations, whether it's summer or winter. And on top of that, it's super ecological. I'd also thought about insulating the walls with cellulose wadding, for example, by putting up the rain barrier and filling it with cellulose wadding. The problem is that over time, the wadding settles. So it's good for the floor or for the roof. However, for the walls, you can't avoid it. Wadding just isn't possible. You have to go with wood wool. Be careful, wood wool is not rot-proof, so you shouldn't put it directly on the ground. Otherwise, moisture could rise up and damage your insulation. So either you start the insulation 20 centimeters above the ground, or you start by putting polyurethane panels on the first row. And then you build the rest with wood wool. There you go. You just have to be careful. It's not the same as when you insulate everything with polyurethane. You don't have to worry about water and humidity. With other insulation types, be more cautious. Then you close all that up with a rain barrier to protect the insulation and the covering of your choice, whether it's siding, wood, stucco. To apply stucco, you first need to put up oriented strand board. Or you remove a layer of wood wool, replace it with rigid wood fiber, which acts as a rain barrier and can directly receive stucco. And now we come to the last step, insulating the roof. This is the most important one because that's where we lose the most heat. So it will need to be well insulated. And just like with the walls, we'll need to rebuild a wooden structure, a framework to hold not only the insulation, but also our roofing, whether it's ethylene, propylene, diene, monomer, steel sheeting, tiles, whatever you want. The solution I prefer is to close off the framework with wooden formwork and fill this formwork with 50 to 60 centimeters of cellulose wadding. At the bottom of your house, you'll have a machine that will shred the packs of wadding. And upstairs, you'll have a pipe with a nozzle that will spray the cellulose wadding everywhere. That will help fill all the gaps and prevent thermal bridges, a bit like expanding polyurethane foam. Here we have a recycled, eco-friendly insulation that is highly effective year-round at a very low cost. So it's really the best solution. We always have the alternative of using wood wool, for example, but it costs much more. It doesn't fit as well because it doesn't mold to all the shapes, all the holes, all the rough spots of our roof. Straw could be an alternative to cellulose wadding. However, straw is very heavy, which creates another problem when considering spraying or placing it everywhere, whereas cellulose wadding is very light. For me, it's the best solution. Next, we'll seal our framework with a rain barrier to protect the insulation, then add our chosen roofing materials such as metal sheets or tiles. In conclusion, insulating a house made from a shipping container is very doable and very effective. I told you so. The professionals who came to actually test the insulation of my house saw that I was 13% better insulated than what the thermal study had predicted. So stop saying that we have to suffer from heat or cold in containers because metal conducts heat or cold, etc. Yes, that's true, but if you put in good insulation, if you follow what I showed you in this video, your house will be very well insulated. There's no reason I haven't shown you all the existing alternatives. I'm going to keep making reports in other container houses or other eco-friendly houses to show you more sources of inspiration. But I also made a more complete video about all the types of insulation with more precise and technical comparisons. I'll put the link in the video description, but with this video, I think you already have a good understanding of the topic. If you have any ideas, additional information, or if you want to share your experience, what you did in your house or what you plan to do in your upcoming projects, well, leave it in the comments. I'm interested to know and to add to everything I've said in this video. There you have it. Leave your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. See you next time. If you want to start a shipping container house construction project, go check out the website mamaisonconteneur.fr. I can help you. I say I, but actually our whole team can help you with this project. All the information is in the video description. Have a great day, everyone, and see you soon.